Welcome. I'm going to talk today about VR resources. I got interested in VR resources over a year ago when they became accidental diamond explorers up in Ontario. However, since then they've been involved in a Nevada play that involves multiple elements, copper, molybdenum, silver, even some tungsten in part of the property. And those are the ones that we know about, but there might be other ones. But let's just focus in on what they're trying to do is trying to find some more copper in the ground. So over the last couple months, they started their first drill program into a property called New Boston. So I just have the stock chart up here, and come February, the anticipation went up, and then drilling slowed, and then it kind of drifted, and then we had this big drop off here. So this is when they just released an updated presentation or news release with some new photos in it of the core. And the market didn't really appreciate what it saw. So I'm just going to take a stab at interpreting this and maybe where we're going, and maybe the market just needs a bit more information, and we'll see where we get to. So they planned like a 1 month drill program, and it went longer than that. But if I go into their website here, and I'm going to go into their project here. So I have not been involved really in porphyries before. I've looked at tons of mining projects and all that stuff, but not really on the base metals, if you want to call it, side. I've looked at iron ore and stuff, but that's even much different. So when I got here, talking about things like quartz stockwork and veining and stuff like that, quartz to me was just a narrow vein that contains maybe some bits of gold in it, but there is much more than that. So when I started learning about this, so I'm just taking a look at the photos here, and I'm like, my first response is, oh, that looks like really poor ground, crumbly ground. Oh my God, how are they going to drill into that? What's going to happen? I'm like, okay, well, this is not the first porphyry quartz type thing to drill. So, but anyway, more and more photos come up. We got some of this. I'm like, okay, so we got the veins here. That's fine. And then we have, even this, stockwork veins, and you got the veins going at different angles, which apparently, if you listen to Google, the more angles and the less parallelism, the better. So they definitely have that feature all over the place. And again, and I also look at this and I go like, okay, it looks like stockwork veining, if you want to call it that, but where is the minerals? This doesn't look like shiny bits of metal, but apparently in all these little veins here, that's where all the minerals get trapped into as they travel, and the stuff in the background would be basically waste. But this apparently has some copper in there. It's just not green. It's not copper shiny brown. It's not shiny chalcopyrite. So it's going to be in there. I'm like, okay. I'm learning as I go. And here's another one. We have copper oxide after copper sulfide, and I just see the rock on the ground with again all this veining, and the more different angles of the veining is better. But I'm like, they're going to drill through this stuff. What's it going to look like? Google didn't tell me a lot, about that, and I'm like, is it going to be easy? Is it going to be hard? It looks hard to me. So that's what I'm looking at. So here we go again, some more of that veining stuff, and this is some other stuff that's not necessarily veining, but again, I look at it and go, oh, That's gonna be fun to drill through. Maybe this one may look better because maybe you'll go faster because it'll be less resistance. It's more like drilling into dirt. So anyway, that gets some of the core there. I'll go into that shortly. But yeah, this is interesting how they drilled in here, and I'm like, this east zone, is it all just going to be pure quartz? That stockwork? I'm like, I'm half expecting it to be having issues, and it turns out, even though I thought I was the only one, it did. They had a lot of problems, and it was a very slow rate, and they slowed it down to make sure they get as much rock recovery as possible, which I think was in the 85 to 90%. And they've upped the core size for Drillhole 2, so hopefully that makes it faster. They're going to get more minerals as well. So anyway, so they released the photos after a few extra weeks of drilling, and then the market kind of like went boom, it went down, and I'm like, okay, well, I figured the ore based on what we've seen is going to look ugly, and I'm going to like, is there metal in there? How is it? Is there minerals in there? And that's kind of what we got. So everyone, who didn't see shiny bits of stuff in it, thought, okay, well, this isn't going to be grading. And it's a porphyry system. There also might be different concentrations of metals along boundaries and other areas. Um, so I think the market also missed the point that there is a ton of quartz here, and this was a massively hot liquid phases coming up through here, just bringing continual minerals up and up. So even if it's not obvious in these cores, and whether they assay high or not, there could be elsewhere as well. So this is the start of something that, or a rebirthing or a continuation of a massive project that was in the distant past. So what they tell me, I actually thought that they were going to go through a very small amount of oxide zone and then hit the sulfides, and I think people maybe were expecting the shiny sulfide stuff. I think what happened is that the oxide zone was a lot longer than maybe was anticipated. And then when they went to the sulfide zone, basically what it was is just not diluted with limestone. So I think you even got even more quartz out of it. So this is in the top, a couple, 200 or 300 meters, is this kind of material. It's called A vein stockworts. A vein apparently means kind of like the first eruption, the first deposit, and then as you get more around the sides of the porphyry, you get B veins and other veins. So this is, I think, is what I've read, is that you could get early copper in it. So what else am I looking for? Where are the shiny bits? Where's all the metal parts? Apparently, I need to look at the quartz, and next to the quartz, I need to look for, little black spots, which could be like phenocrysts that could have sulfides in them. So when we talk about disseminated sulfides, that's where we're going to look at. So we actually want to look for black stuff in the core. So just generally looking on this is kind of like, oh, light green, white, not shiny bits of sulfide. Oh, this is not going to grade. But as you look closer, I think this is what maybe the market is missing. You really have to focus in on how much quartz is in there, and then all the little tiny black stuff around the quartz. So the moly, when I've looked at pictures online, they're little bits of black, banded. A lot of them are in little lines. The phenocrysts here apparently could have copper in them, and silver's in the area. Anywhere around the east zone, if you take a sample, you're gonna sample silver, copper, and moly. So there's gonna be a background grade, if you want to call it, of all that stuff that's just been spread out through the massive amount of limestone. As that liquid just comes up, it just pushes minerals everywhere. But we want to look at concentrated stuff. So this stuff we're looking at First thing I read in the press release is interbedded with limestone, and that makes sense because the porphyry came up through the limestone. So that's strike one, because limestone is going to be just waste rock. You're actually diluting the mineral content. But apparently in the oxidized zones, the little black dots and black lines are going to be more apparent than when you get into the sulfides. So if we just look at some of the stuff, and especially around the quartz, you can see here on the top there's these black lines. So I expect that to be some of the minerals that we're looking for. Along this quartz here, you can really see it amplified there as well, and in here, and you can see just dark patches along the quartz lines, and that I think is where the disseminated, if you want to call it that. You've got these black dots here, and then you can even see that this is not pure white quartz. So you can see that it's getting that other mineral content in it, and you hear some chunks here as well. So I think just knowing some of that and looking at the details, I'm not sure what this is going to grade, but I mean, there is going to be some copper and moly, and I think silver is going to be a big wild card, because it is, a very small amount of silver can add a lot of, value to a project and pay for a good chunk of operating costs if it were ever to go into a mine scenario. So here we go with some of the black stuff. So based on what I've learned and what I've done due diligence, this is not shiny, massive sulfide, chalcopyrite, pyrite everywhere. But little bits add up, and that's really, I think, the point here is that we really don't know how much it adds up, and we will find out when we get the assays back for this project. So this is a 3-meter intersection here that came along, and I think this just highlights that in that limestone section, you're going to see all these, different, areas of vein that just come through, whether they're faults or whatever, and you're going to get different types of metal settling out based on, the friction, the temperature, and all that good stuff. We know that in the whole valley, there are pockets of very high grade copper, and some silver throughout. And that's just all the liquid getting out there in the valley from various sources. And the drilling that they did here is basically, this is one of the sources. There's a massive amount of quartz coming from deep in the earth, coming up and doing its thing. So, and this quartz comes from a source which also comes from here, the Jeep zone also, and then we're also looking at this source of mineralization at depth. This whole thing at the bottom could be feeding a huge area inside New Boston and also outside New Boston. So again, looking at this, I'm just like, I Googled imaged it. Seems like other sites have something like this. So again, this is, I think, is going to grade fine as well. And then so this is at 39, 42 meters, and then they jump to 509 meters. So I think probably maybe the market saying, well, if you go from 40 meters to 500 meters, why would you do that? Where's all the other core photos? And I think my answer would be that is that the top 300 meters is just going to be just multiple, like huge amounts of just quartz everywhere, and with some of the extra oxidation. And then on the bottom 300 meters, it's going to be somewhat similar to this, but in general, there's just going to be quartz everywhere. I don't think we realize that this 600-meter hole, basically, you every single foot, you're going to get a chunk of quartz from the top all the way to the bottom. And they stopped drilling. If they kept going, which was a slow pace, they stopped for a reason. Kept going, there'd be more and more quartz, more and more quartz, more and more quartz. And where does that end? What does it hit? Right. So I think the quartz thing, makes a huge difference. So this is at 500 meters. So this looks a bit different than the first photo we had. Um, you can see lots of little tiny black dots everywhere. They look very similar throughout. We do get this little shiny things that, oh, I think everybody's like, oh, I wish there was a lot more of this. Um, I believe that's just, chalcopyrite. So that's going to grade over 30% copper itself. It could have a tiny bit of silver in it. Could even have a tiny bit of gold in it. We don't know. Um, and that could be a huge difference if they were to find gold deeper down at these levels. And then we see the shiny, chalcopyrite, or as some geologists on videos call it, chalcopyrite. So I don't know where I learned it as chalcopyrite, but that's what I'm going to call it. So anyway, so what I want to focus in on this photo um, is, there's mention in this photo about, there's molybdenum in here as well. It was clearly mentioned. So we had pyrite, chalcopyrite, and molybdenite. So where is it in this photo? Again, moly, when you look at the photos, it's also kind of like a black mineral. So I think just the focus on the darkness and the black spots, and you're like, oh, well, there's not that many black spots here. What kind of grade is this going to get anyway? I'm looking at, I want, up to 1%, 0.1%. Just looking at this going, and that, the black spots might just be a portion of that, might be the minerals that we're looking at. So, but we're going to have a reference to other things that are moly. If we go down to the Jeep zone, which has potentially a little bit of copper, but it's supposed to be more of a moly thing, and the copper on this side of the deposit is supposed to be kind of more of the chalcopyrite type stuff. So we can actually go here, and there is a photo. This is a really small chunk of drill core from that side. So I look at that, it's got a lot of white, it's got some shiny metal in it, but what I want to focus on is there is quartz here. You can see around here, but it just looks like different quartz, right? It's not, as the veiny. You get some dark stuff here, but again, it's not as salt and peppery. So I imagine that's the molybdenite that they have in these things. Um, so just comparing this with that 500 meters, it's even though there's moly there in theory and there's moly here, I think they're different enough that we can now look at the quartz in what we see in the other one and go like, where is this other minerals? So we're deeper down. The blackness, the oxidation may not be as prevalent. So if you remember in the first photo, we had all this, the black stuff along here. So I think the point is here is quartz is translucent. So even though you can't see through it, it's going to give you a tiny bit of information of what's around it. And really what we want to look at is looking for those darker minerals. Is that shining through any of the quartz? So if I look a little bit closer, I would say, just looking at it, this is not that bright white quartz. There's a lot of, grayish quartz. And I think that's going to be kind of the minerals that are attached inside to that quartz that are just kind of shining through, a little bit. So yes, we want to look at all these little these black dots here, but then we also just want to, look at some of the quartz as well and see if we're getting, like here, it's pretty dark there. It's pretty dark there, and I think we're getting minerals underneath there. So when the drill core tore around here, it tore against that quartz, but that quartz is also integrated in here, and there's minerals on the other side of that. So I think even here we're seeing a little bit of a line there. Um, and yeah, on there, I see a lot of kind of like the orange staining, but I think that might be more on top as well. Another thing about the, the chalcopyrite or pyrite, um, you see a core like this, and you're like, oh, that's just a, an outlier, a one little object. But in the reality, this is a 3D system, and this is a tiny hole going through here. Chances are this metal actually is going through the system, potentially getting, bigger in areas and shrinking, and maybe disappearing at a point, but it's just liquid going through and settling it out. So you got to always think that this chunk of steel is continuing out into the country rock around you. Again, so here we have this kind of this darker quartz, which I'm attributing to some of the coloring underneath that. So I'm purely optimistic that you know between the moly, this is copper, silver. I'm curious if there's even trace amounts of gold in here. Um, and let's go. The more quartz we see, I think the better. And then we also have the little black dots as well here. But absolutely, when I first saw these photos, I'm like, where's the shiny bits? This does not look like it's going to grade, you know, 0.2, 0.3% copper, 0.5%, 1% copper. No way. It's not going to do it. Um, but until I start realizing, it's like, what, the disseminated didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I think that's where it is. And I think we got basically, a huge gap in core because it's just quartz after quartz after quartz after quartz. That's what it is. From here up until 300 meters, there is no limestone dilution. So you're just gonna get more of this. I understand it's multi-phase, so it's not all gonna look the same. You're gonna see different stuff. I'm curious about faults and subveins and concentrations and if they're going elsewhere. That's a lot of pressure going up, and I'm assuming that it's going straight up there. Um, I think this also, it's going through this system here. So again, there's a lot of quartz. As you get closer to kind of the outside of porphyry, I don't know, you might get more concentration of metal. I believe even on the diagram here, right, like up on the ridge here, you can see that some of that material would have just like path of least resistance came up, shot up here, and I think we even saw the geologist kind of standing up here with looking at the rocks, green rocks or the red dirt on the ground. So even that it's just going to come up and find whatever path that it wants to, right? So yeah, it is very interesting, and I think this is the first drill hole, the drilling number 2 here. So it is at a different angle. Um, so they're going to complement each other, I guess, in that way, because they're coming from the body different ways. They're going to get different information. Um, so again, the theory is that this is that conductor of what we've seen as a lot of quartz coming from down below, somehow connected over there. And then we have this anomaly on the north side that is also somehow connected there. So this little triangle here, if you want, um, is really, the focus. And they also want to get some information here on drill hole 3 to target this. But I also think there wasn't, they didn't really test for copper over on the Molly side of the Jeep mine. So getting through some of that historic material will be interesting. And even though this is where kind of the very top of this is where tungsten comes in, it's very low grade tungsten, so I don't think there's any economics there, but they could get more of an idea in a formal modern drill hole for sure. And then this is the drill hole we saw. I'm thinking that as it's come up here, hit the limestone, all this stuff over here, it's going to be interesting if they were ever to drill this out like they drilled up the Jeep mine. You see a lot more holes over here. If they were to drill this down to kind of get a structure of, are there dikes and veins and faults going through there with higher concentration? But obviously they want to find large tonnage of economic grades. So I'm more optimistic about potentially what the assays are going to show. We're going to get some nice drill hole number 2 core, which we got a little bit at the beginning. Where is it here? So this is 9 meters in. This isn't even in the conductor. This is again as the conductor goes up and shoots stuff through that limestone. This is basically what we're seeing. So this is what they're calling marbleized. I see a lot, of green here. This looks like to me like it's going to grade a lot of copper, but because it's at 9 meters and it's shallow, we've seen, high grade material at surface, so there's not going to be huge quantity, and maybe the market kind of like pass this by as well. So, we'll see what happens there. But as far as I understand, they'll be drilling 600-700 meters, maybe more through this hole. And I think the assays come at sometime in July. So I don't think they're going to piecemeal it, but I imagine they're going to do the assays for drill hole 1 and 2 and then figure out if they're going to do a drill hole 3 over in that Jeep zone. Anyway, that's my interpretation. You got to kind of, look closely, look at the quartz, and kind of make a decision for yourself. Investing is a very personal, somewhat maybe lonely thing because you're hitting that buy or sell button by yourself, taking responsibility maybe for you and other people. So be wary of that, and make sure you put leverage where you want to put leverage and don't put leverage where you don't want it. So right now I came in because of the diamond play in Ontario, and I'm super fascinated about this project. I'm learning a lot, and I think there's still a lot of upside here. But on the backside, there's a ton of anomalies south of Northway from last year that will have shallower overburden, cheaper drill program. See what's happening in some of those anomalies. I'm waiting for the company. I think the next phase is to get some very detailed geophysics on a couple of those targets to figure out what they look like and where they would drill on that. So I know the company basically outsourced the rare earth project in Ontario, but that did not include all the diamond projects they have. So I was super excited that they didn't just roll it up and bundle it. They are still focused on that, and they're always focused on new or old projects that have a lot of potential. So yeah, I thought I would just give it a go. I know that a few people have done videos, so I haven't done a video in a long time. Here it is. Take it for what it is. Super excited to get those assays, and I think we're going to get some interesting photos from drill hole number 2, maybe in the next 2 or 3 weeks if they're going a lot faster. You would think that they could get photos out, but super stoked here. And I by default like the word disseminated. I do not like nuggety effect. Dissemination is where you want to go, and if you can get the right numbers with dissemination, that's going to get a lot more confident in the project, and I think that's where we're going. So we just need a broad-based, high enough economic number for that disseminated material, and we just have to wait for it. Anyway, I will finish this up, publish it on my YouTube account, and you can enjoy for whatever it's worth. Safe investing, everyone. Bye.